Hey everybody, how is it going? Finally, the Q&A that I promised, I don't know, it's about 2 months ago now, the first time originally. Before we get going, I need to tell you that we have loads of t-shirts currently in stock. They are £20 including postage. They're in black and they're in white. This is a size small, although normally I wear a size medium. Right then, the first question. To start with, we're going to target what are normally the most frequently asked questions. They're kind of around training and things like that. And then we'll go on to some more light-hearted ones like the best coffee stop in the Cotswolds. A little bit niche, I know, but it's worth talking about. Right, first off is a question from Firas Abdullah. Hi Chris, I don't have anything like heart rate or power. How can I start training, and generally, what should it look like? Thank you. Well, you definitely don't need heart rate or a power meter to train. Think of runners and athletics tracks and things like that. They train to distance and to time. So max intensity efforts to a set duration. That's one of my favorite ways of doing it anyway. So if you really want to improve your sustainable power output, so riding hard up a long climb, for example, 12-minute efforts, maybe 2, 3 or 4 times in one ride, and do them at the max intensity you can sustain for that long. If you want to improve your more explosive power, then 20 to 30 second max intensity efforts are really good. If you just want to ride for an hour and you want to monitor your cadence, a stopwatch on your handlebars is a really good way of just counting your cadence. Every time one leg makes a complete revolution, that's a way of really keeping on top of how fast you're actually pedaling, and can be really good for improving things like your speed and just helping take some of the torquey strain out of your legs. On the whole, you don't really need a heart rate monitor or a power meter. They're just there as data collection tools. And as you get really, really serious with cycling and you want to spend more money, then that changes perhaps, and they do become more important. I actually really enjoy riding my mountain bike and not using a power meter at all. I don't even have a cadence sensor on my mountain bike at the moment, and sometimes I don't take the the heart rate monitor either. And I think it can be really beneficial sometimes to set yourself completely free from using all of these tools. So yeah, max intensity to duration. And if you want to do endurance rides, then make sure you can always talk at a reasonable and sustainable kind of conversational pace. So if you're going to go out and ride and you want to improve your endurance, riding for 4 hours, make sure you can take short sentences and talk in short sentences. That then indicates that you're working at the correct intensity. On the whole, expensive tools like heart rate and power, they're not necessary. They're not gimmicks, they're gadgets which can be really productive if you want to really get the last few % out of yourself as an athlete. But to get into the sport, you definitely don't need them. Here's a question from Troy Collett, which I quite like actually. What's the best workouts to get fit for racing? It's quite an easy answer to this. You really need to work out what sort of racing you're doing. So if you're going to be doing things like, quite popular here in the UK, the 10-mile time trials, then you need to train specifically to improve the aspects of fitness which apply to that event. So that'll be 20 to 25 minute intervals, depending on how fast you are. 30 to 35 is also possible, especially if the circuit's going to be hilly as well. If you're looking to do lots of criterium racing, then you'll need to be able to ride at a sustained pace, but also make efforts and then recover back down to that baseline pace. So that would mean riding at something like 80 to 85% of what you can maintain for an hour, so at that intensity, but then include some sprints in there as well. And if you're going to do road racing, then you're going to have to look at a broader spectrum of fitness. You're going to need some more endurance work in there, which will benefit all the other disciplines as well. Or if you're going to do cyclocross, then you'll need to be technically really good. So you have to try and analyse the event that you want to train for, and then break it down into what requirements of my fitness is, what demands is this going to place on my body, and then try and train towards that. Think of the circuit. So if you're doing a hilly road race, it's not that you need to lose weight, it's that you need to then train for those 2 to 3 to 20-minute climbs, depending on where you live and things like that. There are a few givens though, and that is that endurance training, so 25% longer than your longest race event, no matter what discipline that is definitely going to benefit you overall, because you need those endurance adaptations to help bump up the rest of your fitness as well. So there's a lot of cell development that goes on when we do endurance training, and that will then go on to make it easier for your muscles to get stronger, to deliver oxygen to your muscles as you're training at a higher intensity. But it comes back to analysing the event that you've got. There's a lot going on here, isn't there? It comes back to analysing the event that you're going to be doing and building towards that. Got a proper mixture of technology going on here. Philippa Malone from Dartmoor lives in a very hilly area of Dartmoor, which is in the south of the UK, and it's brutally hilly. I'm really keen on upping my time in the saddle to aim for endurance rides, but with only an 8-speed cassette, I'm struggling with burn in my thighs. Any tips for upping endurance without the flat land to hammer? Yeah, it's going to be hard, especially where you live, to actually build your endurance. One of the most important things living in a hilly area is actually not to absolutely smash it up every single climb. I know that's going to be hard with your gearing, but to ride the climbs at a slightly steadier pace and then maintain that sort of pace over the top of the climbs and into the next, either the top of the descent. Basically, you want to prolong your effort and lower the intensity. If all you're doing is trying to ride uphill really, really hard, it is going to make it slightly detrimental to your endurance performance. It might also be worth considering maybe jumping in the car or trying to get yourself somewhere else to do a few different rides. If you can travel to somewhere that is a little bit less brutal, is a little bit less steep and demanding, you'll find that it will be easier just to maintain the time in those lower base zones. And by doing that, you'll be able to ride for longer and you'll improve your endurance. On the whole, to improve your endurance, you just need to try and increase your duration by around 30 minutes to 1 hour each week. So if you start at week 1 and you can manage 2 hours in the hills, and then build that to 2 hours 20, 2 hours 30, so on week by week, you should see some benefits. Remember to eat and drink well. That's really important, especially in the hills, because it's going to be placing a lot of calorific demand on your body. Then with reference to your gearing, it might be worth having a look on local Facebook groups, or maybe trying to find someone that is out there that perhaps has a cassette they might either want to swap with you. Maybe you can get a cassette with an expander sprocket on the back. That's quite a big thing for mountain bikes a few years ago, where before an era where cassettes were absolutely huge, you could have maybe 7 normal and then one that's quite like a get out of jail free card, and you could use that for your climbing. It will mean you may well have a few bigger jumps further down the cassette, but if you can live with that, and it means you've got a lower gear for getting up those climbs, it will make life that little bit easier for you. Also, it might be worth checking your position on the bike. If it's just your thighs that are burning and it's not like an all-rounded glute and leg burn, it could be that you slap maybe that little bit too far forwards, and if you go back a little bit on the saddle, you could be spreading the load across more muscle groups, making it a little bit easier for you as well. Right, this is one of the most frequently asked questions right now. So it comes in from BB, Alex Chastney, Andrew Pollard, Moshi Freilich, Moishi Kaufman, and also James Lilly. Hi, I'm 14 and I really want to get into road racing. What is the best way to do this? And there's also another question, and that was revolving around how many kilometers a 14-year-old should be doing each year. Right, so to get into road racing, I think ideally the best way to go about this is to find a local club who can advise you about the road race scene in your area and the circuit race scene in your area. Depending on where you are in the world though, is going to dictate how easy or how difficult that is going to be for you. So some generic advice for a 14 to 16-year-old for someone that has relatively easy access to road racing would be simply to start getting into the races. So you want to go onto the internet, Google races in your area. It should be quite easy. Here in the UK, it would be going via British Cycling. If you're in Belgium, Holland, you'll be doing it via your own national governing body. And once you've done that, you want to try and pick out an event that's not too far away. You don't have to travel too far for your first few events. You want to make sure that you've ridden your bike a little bit. You want to make sure you're comfortable on your bike. You want to make sure you're comfortable in a group. At the age of 14 to 16, it's all about really building the technical skills and getting really comfortable on a bike. So you don't want to be worrying too much about how many hours you're training or what sort of intervals you're doing. That can all come afterwards. The most important thing is to get really confident and really comfortable on your bike, in a group, in a wide variety of situations and scenarios. Your first race is always going to be quite a challenge. You're always going to be really, really nervous. I still get nervous now. It's a good thing to have. It means you're all switched on, you're ready to race, and it's how you channel that nervous energy that really matters, rather than the fact that you are nervous. So use it as a time to focus on what you need to do when it comes to the event. So warm up, make sure you've eaten well, you've had enough to drink, and that you're just mentally completely aware of what it is that you're about to do. So if you're lining up on the start line, you want to make sure you're lined up near the front if possible. You want to make sure that you're confident with the gear you're starting in. You want to make sure you're comfortable with the clothing that you've chosen to wear on that day. The local riding scene, the local cycling scene where you live, is going to be really, really useful for helping you find an event that's suitable and at the right level for you for the first time. There's a wide variety of events at that age, and people are developing so differently that it actually makes it a really challenging age to start cycling. It's not a given that it's not a given that your first experience of racing at that age is going to be how the rest of your racing career could go. For example, when you're 14, you're going to be up against riders that are nearly 16, and a 16-year-old on the whole can be a lot more developed than your average 14-year-old, for example, and that makes it really tough physically. So my advice would be, don't get disheartened if it's difficult in your first race. That is not a reflection of how every other race is going to go. Use it as experience, use it as fun, because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. And good luck. And to answer Mushi Kaufman about the 20,000 kilometers that someone suggested underneath your post, 20,000 is absolutely mad. There are many domestic level UK riders that wouldn't even consider doing that, and that'll be the same in Holland, France, Belgium, wherever you go. 13,000, that's already a lot. As I said before, it's not really about the amount of miles you're doing on your bike, it's about getting comfortable on your bike. I think it'd be a really cool idea to set some challenges, maybe go out and challenge yourself to ride 100 kilometers, 150 kilometers, or even 200. It's going to be dependent on what you're used to. At that age, you don't need to worry about consistently doing the same amount of riding each week. I think it's nice to have a few big weeks throughout the year that maybe come off the back of an event where you felt really fit and you were physically able to do it. At 14 to 16 or at 14 to 21, there's so much development going on in someone's body. Just because you get young riders in the Tour de France at 22 like Egan Bernal, it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the same for everyone. Everyone is developing at such a different rate in your teenage years that you just have to be really careful and really mindful of what's going on in your body. One of the only two injuries I've ever really had was when I was a child. I had something called Osgood-Schlatter's. That's probably a terrible pronunciation, but it's where your muscles develop slightly faster than your bone, and it starts, I think this is correct anyway, I was young at the time, and it starts to pull away on the tendon on the front of your knee, and it's excruciatingly painful. And it's probably because I was trying to ride my bike just that little bit too much at the time and not allowing my body to catch up with the development that I was going through. So enjoying riding your bike, getting out with friends, messing around essentially, and getting really comfortable and developing those essential technical skills as well as a little bit of fitness is so important. Also, be aware of bone density and things like that with your development. It's really good to continue doing running and impact sports as well, because cycling is traditionally one of the sports that doesn't really do a huge amount for bone density. Just enjoy riding your bike, have fun, don't focus too much on the overall total, although it is really cool to have that 13,000 kilometer goal. Leonid Kolomitsev, what do you rely on more during training? Is it your feelings or gadgets, or is it maybe something else? To be really honest, it's a combination of everything. I rely on my feelings to kind of quantify what the gadgets are telling me. So, for example, power meters can be known to be wrong. And if you're riding and you're doing a number that's way higher than you're used to seeing for that sort of sensation, then you know there's a problem, and that's a great time then to stop and zero offset it, or maybe send it back for a recalibration, that sort of thing. So cycling's a weird sport. There's so much emphasis on how you feel, but there's also a lot of emphasis on the numbers. Sometimes you can put out the best numbers you've ever done and feel absolutely rubbish. Some of your best performances can come when you're rubbish. And that's probably because you were conserving a little bit of energy throughout the race or the ride. What do I focus on the most? I like to feel good when I ride my bike, and I like to do good numbers. So as I said at the start, I kind of use the feeling to quantify what the numbers are saying rather than the other way around. If I feel good on my bike, I feel happy, and that makes me enjoy the ride more. So I think it's all about balance. I think if I was to ride my bike every day, produce good numbers, but felt awful all the time, that would be a sign that something wasn't quite right. You've got to use feeling to try and gauge how you're going. It's kind of an indicator of your actual form. So if you're feeling really tired, for example, and you can't quite get the numbers, that's a bit of a flag that maybe you either need to have a rest the next day, or maybe you need to just take a few easy days. And equally, if you're training and you're hitting out numbers way higher than you expected to, but you're finding it quite easy, that's not just an indicator that you've got good form, it's also perhaps an indicator that you've maybe progressed a little bit and you can take your training up a notch and try and hit some even higher numbers. Because the sun is encroaching on me, I'm going to do a part 2, and that's going to go out on Sunday. So just before I go real quick, let's do some shorter and slightly more light-hearted questions. Oh, here we go. JV, what do you think of chamois cream? To be really honest with you, I've rarely used it. Every now and again, I do actually own a pot of chamois cream. I've had it since my 30th birthday, which was in 2017. Every now and again, I might dip into it if I'm going to go, so for example, when I did that 420 kilometer ride. On the whole, if I had a problem, I'd use something like Germaline or Savlon. Chamois cream is quite expensive, and for the amount that I use it, it'd probably just get wasted. Modern chamois is so different to the leather chamois that it was originally designed for years ago. So as long as you're washing your kit and you're washing yourself, I don't think there's a massive need for it. Here's a very, very important question for cyclists. Chaz Pilks, Everesting and WBR Ambassador are local to my area. Best coffee shop or best coffee stop in the Cotswolds? And PS, Hank isn't watching. He says that because just down the road from Hank is the Wild Carrot Cafe in Tetbury, and that's a lovely new place. My favourite coffee stop in the Cotswolds, I really like the post office in Colne St Aldwyn's. It's run by volunteers. It's probably not the best coffee, but it's just a really nice place to stop. Or the cafe in Lechlade. It's also really nice. I think it's called Linwood's. Back to my paper pad. Sean Merritt, have you always been into cycling, or did you play other sports when you were younger? If you've seen me do anything but ride my bike, you'll know that there's no way I could do any other sport. There's a reason I haven't filmed myself running or kicking a football. It's because it's comical. In fact, if you look closely online, you can see me kicking a football, and it's horrific. Have a little YouTube search for that one. G-Boz, what is the hardest thing about being a parent? To be really honest, it's probably travel. And you know, I'm still driven, I'm still motivated to do my own thing in my life. And it's trying to find the balance of sacrificing time with them for my own goals and ambitions. It's a bit of a tricky one. Just a couple more before I'm completely scorched by the sun right now. On a scale of 1 to 10, this is from CNE, rate your bike mechanic skills. I'd say 9 out of 10. I can do everything. I can bleed brakes, I can set the bike up, I can build a bike, I can build a wheel, true wheel. I'm pretty confident. 9 out of 10. You know, I'd always prefer that a genuine professional mechanic did something, but I can do it. I'm not a massive fan of setting up electric gears though. That's the only thing. I'm not a massive fan of electrics, if I'm honest. Nicholas Holm with today's final question. Favourite content creators on YouTube, cycling or otherwise? I really love quite a few different ones actually. So if you look at the channels that I subscribe to, they're pretty much what I watch. Sam Pilgrim on the mountain bikes, Matt Jones on mountain bikes, Harry Metcalfe, both Harry's Farm and Harry's Garage, Henry Catchpole, Chris Harris is amazing. It's just people I like, people that I watch, and I think, yeah, in real life, I'm sure you'd be exactly the same as you are on the videos, and they've got this shared interest. Who have I watched a lot of recently? Oh, that's another one. Andy TMF, the Missenden Flyer, does motorbike reviews. Actually, it's probably my favourite channel to watch most of the time, if I'm honest, because I really wanted a motorbike for a period of time. And then there's Ben Claremont, who I've learned a huge amount from. So that's not just for the 360 camera that I use, but also some of the editing software as well. There are so many good things out on YouTube, and it's been a real experience. I didn't watch a huge amount, to be really honest, until I started doing my own videos this year. And having done that now, it's been just, I've really enjoyed it, and I've got a huge appreciation for the work that people are doing. Right, make sure you check the links and everything down in my description. Generally, any of the questions that you have about equipment and things like that have probably already been answered down there. Links to get to the shop where you can buy the t-shirt and things like that. I'm going to film another one of these tomorrow. I'm now almost completely in the sun, and I'm going to go and put some sun cream on, edit the video, upload it, and I'll do another one for Sunday. See you again.